Welcome to today's Facts Friday. The question today is on Annex 2 requirements of the MDR and specifically on the technical specifications such as features, dimensions and performance attributes of the device and of its variants and configurations and accessories. And these would typically appear in the product specifications made available to the user, for example in brochures, catalogs and similar publications. Questions we received is now that when completing this part of the technical documentation, should we only refer to outward-facing documents and not to internal documents such as design inputs and design outputs, clinical evaluations, reports, etc. And in addition to that, would documents like the summary of safety, clinical performance, be another example, or the clinical evaluations itself. First of all, thank you for this interesting question, because it's an often misunderstood subject. In general, the technical documentation is to prove to the reviewer from the notified body or maybe even the competent authority that the device meets the applicable requirements as mentioned in the MDR. However, the basis for this is that the device meets its specifications. And whether or not the specifications are the correct specifications is then proven in the clinical evaluation report. Section 1.1 of Annex 2 is meant to provide the reviewer of the technical documentation a general overview of the characteristics of the device. In that way, the reviewer can already form an idea of the risks of the device. It is therefore extremely important to provide the reviewer with sufficient information in this section to be able to understand all aspects of the device. For example, often the device description is very brief, as it is by default expected that the reviewer knows the type of device. Unfortunately, in many cases this leads to kind of silly questions from the reviewer, resulting in one or more extra question rounds with high additional costs and loss of precious time. When looking along Annex 2, Chapter 6 of Annex 2 lists the expected verification and validation data. Now, verification and validation can only be performed against specifications and other requirements. Interestingly, Chapter 6 itself does not mention anything about specifications or requirements. We see often that companies provide a set of test reports but are not clear about specifications covered by these reports. Therefore, in Annex 1.1L, it is expected by the reviewer to find the specifications for which the proof of compliance will be provided in Chapter 6. So, specifications mentioned in Annex 2L should align with the proof provided in Chapter 6 and vice versa. Maybe it is easier to state that Annex 2 Section 1.1L is not a requirement. It is something the reviewer needs to review the rest of the documentation. The MDR itself already gives a hint to what it could look like by stating that would typically appear in the product specification made available to the user, for example in brochures or catalogs. So what is expected is a list of specifications in a form which could also be shown to customers. And I'm then thinking of specifications such as dimensions, weights, materials, complying to certain standards, for example biocompatibility and sterility, power consumption, pixel sizes, and specifications like that. As such, I would expect that this list is an abbreviated version of the design traceability matrix, taking the most important specifications. For example, for hip joint prosthesis, the list will be rather short, while I guess your design traceability matrix is really extensive. Regarding the second part of your question, as the specifications mentioned in Annex 2 1.1L are inputs for the reviewer to review the evidence that the device meets its specifications, the clinical evaluation report and also the summary of safety and clinical performance should not be mentioned here. product procedures are not expected here, as the brochure is made according to the specifications and thus cannot be the basis for the specifications itself.